Welcome to our community conversations on discovering McCall and the West Central Mountains. I'm Dr. Bryan Williams, president of McCall College, and I'll be serving as your moderator for this series. McCall College is a local, specialized college offering meaningful education to students of all ages. The motto of this series and all of our series that we've been able to do here on YouTube is Local Voices Addressing Local Issues. What we'd like to focus on this time are newcomers. Many new people are arriving in our region, and for them, orienting to a rural area in McCall is difficult. This series seeks to help newcomers succeed in discovering McCall and our region. Local Voices will seek to offer crucial advice in the discovery process. Existing residents maybe will also discover local features that they may have missed. I'm so excited that for week one of our conversations, and I think we'll have about 6 conversations, maybe more, will be Anette Spickard. She's our city manager here in McCall, and she's agreed to help us to figure out how to succeed in governmental interactions. Welcome, Anette. Anette became our city manager in February 2018. At that point, McCall is one of 3, but now only one of 2 with a council manager form of government. Anette oversees all the operations of the city and reports directly to the 5-member council. Anette has 25 years of public sector experience in finance, public policy, infrastructure, planning, HR management, legislation, and community engagement. You've been busy.
Yeah.
Welcome, Anette.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself and your family and why you enjoy living in McCall.
Thank you, Bryan, and thank you for inviting me to join your community conversations. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Anette Spickard, the city manager here, but some people might think of me as a boomerang, meaning that I lived in McCall when I was a kid and attended high school here back in the 80s. I did leave to go off to college and ended up living in Oregon for 25 years where I raised my family, and then had the great fortune to come back to McCall to work and to serve this community in this role. So I'm really excited and happy to be back in a community that I really love.
Thank you. Now, tell us about your role in McCall and the West Central Mountain region.
Okay, so as the city manager of McCall, I'm responsible for all the day-to-day operations of the city and making sure that the policies and plans of the city council are carried out and that the citizens are being served in the most economical way, and that we're taking care of all of the things that make a city work, things that people might not always see or might take for granted, such as taking care of our street systems, providing clean drinking water, having our beautiful park system, having public art, a lot of these types of things.
So does that give you, do people phone you about potholes?
Yes.
The focus of this series is, and there aren't too many potholes. Well, anyway, we can talk about that later. But thank you. It seems to be the number one comment in city managers nationally, if not internationally, is the conversation over things like potholes. But even that is under your purview then.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
We're focusing on newcomers, and I'd like for you to give us a sense of some of the issues that newcomers tend to come to you with, and they would like for you to address. And it might be potholes, but what issues do you encounter that newcomers will typically also encounter?
Well, I think one thing that is pretty common, at least in the 4+ years that I've been here, is people fall in love with this area in the summer and decide to buy a house and move here, and they don't realize that McCall receives about 135 inches of snow each year. And we have snow, yes, for like 6 months out of the
Okay.
year. So understanding how to live in a winter climate and how to manage snow is something that not everyone understands before they get here. So we get a lot of questions about snow in terms of, my driveway needs to be cleared, or where can I put the snow, or there's so much snow, what do I do? So, yes, snow management is a very big part of living in this area.
And take a minute and just sort of talk about, you can really almost talk about the pace of life, because
Oh, yes.
traffic moves at 25 miles an hour in this town.
Yes.
And everyone that comes to our town seems to have been oriented to 35 or 45 or more freeway
Yes.
speeds.
Yes.
And so that really slows down our community. And that's a benefit, I think, from our perspective, is it not?
Yes. So definitely traffic is something that I hear a lot about at City Hall from locals and visitors alike. Our community is really quite small in terms of geography, but we do receive a lot of visitors, especially weekends. So it's important for folks to understand that the people that live here really do drive 25 or less, and that it is a much slower pace here. And so we would like people to respect our traffic laws and make sure that everyone's being safe. We have a lot of families that come visit, which is wonderful, which means there are a lot of children and families walking in our downtown, crossing the streets. So we want to make sure that people are not speeding through and potentially creating an issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And in this section, I'd love to also remember our animals, because when newcomers come, they're enthralled with the animals that will come up to their doors in our homes. Talk to us just a bit about the animals of McCall and what newcomers' stories are, or what you've encountered.
Well, we definitely are in a wildlife habitat, so folks new to the area should understand that it's very common to have bears in the summer here. We have a herd of deer that live here year round, and now our multiple generations of the deer being born and raised here. And we have a lot of people that try to feed the deer, which we definitely discourage. What has happened is the deer have stopped migrating out of the area in the winter, and then that becomes a real challenge for their survival rate to find things to eat. And so feeding the deer just sort of exacerbates that problem, because then they have more little deer, they don't leave. And then sadly, we do have a lot of deer that are hit by cars, and that's not good. And then the other outcome is that we do have more and more mountain lions or cougars that come into our area because it's easy prey for them. And so we would really like people not to feed the deer so that they will go back to their normal patterns. And then we also have foxes, which is great to see, but please don't feed them either. The other issue that occurs when there's a large concentration of wildlife kind of unnaturally in the same area is they spread disease amongst themselves. So it's just not a healthy way for the animals to be living.
And we have bears as well.
Yes,
I've
we
come
do.
home and after a shift, and there's the vision of a bear crawling through. This was before we put the new garbage cans up.
Yeah.
But there it was in my driveway, pawing through the garbage.
Yeah.
Any quick suggestions on bears?
Sure. We do require bear-proof trash cans for your household waste, so make sure you use those correctly and get them shut so that the bears are not attracted and getting into them. We also advise that you take down bird feeders. They're definitely attracted to bird seed. put away your barbecues and your coolers at night. The bears tend to come early morning or late at night, and they can be pretty destructive. One of the calls that I did receive from someone that was new to the area is that they were very upset when a bear entered their house after they had left the sliding glass door open and had gone for a hike, and the bear got in and ate the family's birthday cake off the counter. And so they were very upset. They didn't know who to call, so they called me. But again, just have to be smart with your food items around bears because we are in bear country here.
There we go. So thank you for those stories. Those are really helpful. McCall uses a council manager form of government, and that compares to what most people are familiar with a strong mayor form of government. Can you help us understand why this works best for McCall?
So in our form of government, the 5 counselors are focused on policy and not the day-to-day operations. And so they hire me as a professional manager to make sure that all the day-to-day work is taken care of. Because the mayor is not involved in that, he can actually vote on items that come before the council like any other counselor and be involved in those decisions, which in a strong mayor form wouldn't happen. And then they also have the time to spend out in the community instead of in the office, doing paperwork or whatever. So I can take care of all that. It also provides a nice buffer when we have development applications coming in, because the mayor is not involved in the process before it comes to the council. So that provides, I think, a level of fairness to the applicants and to the public, that no one council member has any advance or inside knowledge of the development applications. So they go through the planning and zoning and then get up to the council. Yeah.
Thank you. As a resort town, many of our new residents are not aware of our efforts to protect our community. I think the most obvious illustration is they ask us why there's not a McDonald's in McCall. Can you help us understand that?
Sure. So the city residents and in the broader region as well really have spent a lot of time and effort on and this is a copy of our planning documents that you can have, but it's really important to this community that we maintain our local small town character and that we're not just anywhere USA with all the different franchises you could see in any particular city. And so we do have some rules around restaurants and retail shops, and really encourage unique, locally owned restaurants and retail shops. And we want to see a certain number of those before we allow franchises to come in and compete. And so that's why, because we're trying to support our local mom and pop organizations.
So that would mean that if there's enough hamburger joints already in McCall, then McDonald's could put an application and come to McCall if they so chose to do. Is that sort of how it's working out?
Yes.
Just to protect these smaller businesses and give them a shot.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that's important because I certainly hear that one a lot. Well, we do have a lot of snow. I'm not sure, 130 inches, I think was your number as an average. But what's really odd about McCall and yet interesting is that our children never get a snow day. I spent many years in large cities, and if they got 2 inches, they would shut down. And yet in all the years we've been here at McCall, children rarely get a snow day. They'll get ice days when it's too icy, but snow. How does McCall function so well in the winter?
Well, I think it's a lot of credit to our Public Works Department. We have a lot of great, well-trained staff and the equipment to plow and keep the roads open immediately after any storm event. And it's just part of our, psyche here, I guess, to manage snow and move it around. So we're able to keep all those roads clear and the school buses running regardless. And so it's a good partnership with the school district. But yes, that means there's not a lot of snow days here. And I think our kids here grow up pretty hardy. They're able to be outside and it's just not an issue for them. And our area supports outdoor recreation all year round. The winter recreation is just a wonderful opportunity here. And I think a reason why a lot of families move here because they want their kids to be exposed to all of these great outdoor physical activities.
It is wonderful that way.
Yeah.
Now, when we first moved here, a member of our family had a vehicle that didn't like snow very much. It was so low to the ground that it would constantly hit the berms. Now, berms are one of the frustrations of residents, and it's certainly better over the last few years than it was when we originally arrived. But berms tend to be a reality of snow life. Have you got any suggestions for our newcomers when it comes to berms?
Well, so first, what is a berm? And so when we come through and plow the neighborhood streets, we have particular equipment that tries to leave the minimal amount of snow across the front of your driveway. Most of the snow is pushed into much larger piles in between the driveways. So that's one thing people will notice is that big walls of snow start to develop throughout the winter. But in particular, in front of your house, I think what they need to know is they will have to have a shovel or their own little snow blower because they will have snow in their driveway as well that they're going to need to move. And so we try to minimize that as much as possible. But if there's a heavy snow event, it's just unavoidable to have, that small remainder across your driveway as we go down the street.
And ignoring a berm because you don't have time to move it has a severe consequence in this town. It might be snow on day one, but it's ice on day two.
Yeah.
And so much harder to move.
Yeah, and you don't want to drive over it and compact it because then that will create a longer term issue for maintaining your driveway. Yeah. Absolutely. So you do have to have good habits of clearing your snow. Just like you might mow your lawn in the summer, you got to clear your snow in the winter.
The water that comes, thankfully, also comes in liquid forms and fills up our lakes and gives us a wonderful environment to live here in McCall. How do we protect our lakes and environment and make sure that we can pass what we are enjoying on to our grandchildren?
No, that's a great question. Payette Lake is just such a community asset and such a wonderful feature of this area that really makes McCall. And it is, you may not know, and our newcomers may not know, but the lake is our sole source of drinking water for this area. So it's super important that we protect it and take care of it. And the ways we do that are with, we have, requirements if you build a house around the lake for fertilizer, things like that, not running into the lake. We have special rules to try to protect the water quality in the area. And a new project just underway is a waterways management plan with the county commissioners where the city and the county are working together on some, whatever the new policies and rules might need to be in the future to protect the lake, given that we've seen so much more use and demand for using the lake in the summers, with all the various types of recreation, swimmers, boaters, kayakers, just a lot more people using the lake these days.
It must be hard because the different kinds of people have different kinds of needs. And the most recent are the wave boats that come in and thoroughly love the lake. And yet all the residents aren't terribly happy with what it does to the lake shore.
Right.
Is there a balancing that you try and sense out, or how do you approach difficult environmental questions like that?
Well, I think what our job is as the staff is to make sure that we have the objective data, empirical data, whatever data we can find to help inform the decision making, so that we're providing the council and the commissioners information that will help them make a good informed decision, that it's not just based on emotion, that they have practical solutions that will achieve the outcome they're trying to reach. And then the other piece to that is it's so important to have education. We spend a lot of time and effort at the city working on education and outreach and trying to raise awareness about proper recreation responsibilities and techniques, and how to be a good user of our amenities in the area, and to understand, the consequences of, not following some of these things. So, yeah, I think educating people is super important.
Excellent. Well, McCall seems to be popular. We know that because we keep hearing about all the building that's going on in our region, and our paper is full, seemingly weekly, with large plans of people trying to build something or to come to McCall in a way that they can. How do we grow well in our city that was really designed to be a small town?
Yeah, so again, the really important thing to know is that there's been a lot of work done to create development standards and requirements and policies and get those in place. And so those have been in place since 2017. And we've updated a lot of our development requirements to manage that growth really well, that demand. Obviously, people have property rights. We can't just outright deny things, but we can work with them to make them appropriate for the scale of the neighborhood or for the type of use of the property they want to have, as well as the design and the features and the look of it, to make sure that we're maintaining our character in this area. So it is a lot of work. And we do have a lot of people interested in building here, but we do take a lot of time and care with those applications to make sure that they're going to be appropriate.
We've had a lot of conversation on affordable living.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any ideas that you've had that would seem to help us achieve that goal of more affordable living for our locals? Is there anything that you've encountered?
Well, in terms of housing, of course, is the number one hot topic of the day. There is a lot of pressure on folks in this area to find housing when we don't have a lot of housing stock available for long-term rentals or for purchase at the price points our local wages support. We have a housing action committee and underway right now that's developing strategies for us to implement to try to address that very question, and that will be available at the end of this month. But there's a lot of creative thinking around incentives to try to build certain types of units. How can we make more in a smaller area? How can we partner with major employers to help them create housing for their staff? So there will be more on that, and maybe after that comes out, we could do another conversation just on housing. And then let me think here. So you were trying to get at the making it more affordable to live here. The other big initiative or cost that we see is childcare is a big issue in our community. There's a lack of availability and it is expensive. So I think there are some efforts underway to try to figure out how to get some additional childcare services here. And the West Central Mountains Economic Development Council has a position, a staff person that's working on that very issue. So I think that would be helpful to our families. And then lastly, it's very expensive to have internet here. And a lot of people need internet. There are remote workers or our businesses just trying to do credit card transactions, our kids doing online schoolwork. So the demand for good quality internet is very high. And unfortunately, we don't have a good infrastructure in the existing system to manage that much bandwidth. So we are working with our counties and cities and other groups to create a new broadband fiber network in this area that can support that. And the hope is that by doing it collectively as a public system, we can bring the price down per month for people substantially, so that that monthly bill can be a lot lower for people for better service, and then they have those funds to apply to some other part of their cost of living.
Is there a calendar of some sense of the first neighborhood and what might be the first neighborhood that might receive information concerning better infrastructure, particularly broadband?
Well, we do have a plan for how we would roll this out, and so we're looking at neighborhoods that contain a high number of year-round residents and proximity to the existing main fiber cable, that type of thing. The big question, like many projects, trying to get them off the ground, is how to finance it to get that first one off the ground. So right now we're pursuing a number of grants and opportunities to try to finance it. So I don't have a specific timetable. We really, but I would see it happening within 3 years.
Wonderful.
3 to 5 years.
We'll take it whenever it comes.
Yeah, so we are actively working on that right now.
City Hall tends to be a challenging spot in many cities. It can be a bureaucratic struggle to accomplish a goal. If somebody has a new idea for their property and they'd like to accomplish that, can you give us a bit of a roadmap on how to succeed at interacting with City Hall?
Sure. Well, the first thing I would recommend is take a look at our website, mccall.id.us. We have a lot of resources on there on how to start a business in McCall, what you need to do. We have resources on if you want to build a house here, what that looks like in that process. And a lot of our business can be done electronically now. But of course, we are in City Hall Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. People are more than welcome to come down and talk to us. We have staff on site that are able to answer your questions. And I set aside time every Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 4 p.m., open office hours for anyone to drop in, and I can try to help you as well.
And that's how we did this.
Yes.
I wandered in on a Wednesday afternoon, and lo and behold, if you didn't welcome me into your office and accept the opportunity of having a conversation. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
I found that it was well defined on the City Hall website, and when I went to, I assume it was on your page, it just told me what those office hours were, and I found it really helpful to be able to do that. So thank you for doing that. Help us to understand why we pay that extra 1% in McCall. We get a lot of conversation because we aren't like Boise. What's that 1% that we see on our purchases going towards?
Sure. So in Idaho, resort communities of less than 10,000 people, of which we are one, are allowed to ask voters to approve what's called a local option tax. And so we have a couple of those here in McCall. One is an extra 1% sales tax on certain goods, not all, but certain goods. And then that money is dedicated for street repairs and improvements. And so we do have a list of what those funds are for, that you can get through our Public Works Department. The other is that we have a 6% lodging tax. So when people stay at a hotel, motel,
it's 6 or 3?
It's 6.
It's 6.
Yeah,
okay.
For hotels, motels, Airbnbs, any kind of lodging less than 30 days. And that is split. 50% of that goes towards street improvements as well. And then the remaining 50% or 3% is allocated out through a grant process. So we have a citizen panel, a citizen commission, that reviews requests from the community and city departments for use of those funds, and they're for tourism mitigation. So I think the state legislature.
That's an interesting term.
Yeah,
tourism mitigation.
Well,
what does that mean?
So what that means is the state legislature recognizes that we get this big influx of population here that may put more wear and tear on the community, our infrastructure, our programs, and that the local property taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for that. And so instead it's paid by the visitors. And then we use those funds to support all kinds of nonprofits and groups that are doing things for local kids and things like that, as well as the most recent thing is our Parks Department has taken on plowing the snow off of the downtown sidewalks for all those business owners to allow people to navigate downtown safely and not have ice. And yeah, so that's been a very successful and popular program.
We need another conversation.
Okay.
I can sense that. There's so much that you handle on your plate. And first of all, our thanks for doing all that you do to make our city better. As you reflect on our conversation so far, was there anything that you'd like to adjust or amend to anything that you've said? This is live TV, and sometimes we have to amend things afterwards. Are we doing okay?
I think we're doing great. I think one thing we haven't touched on that a newcomer should know coming here is that this is a super engaged and active community, and we have so many volunteer opportunities for people to get involved and to be a part of the community beyond just living here. So I encourage anybody coming here to check out all the groups supporting the arts, supporting kids, supporting, animal sheltering, you name it. There's a group here that's trying to work on it, and so many ways to meet people through that.
And while we're filming, Idaho Gives is functioning.
Yes.
So many of our
day.
nonprofits are a part of Idaho Gives.
Yes.
And so if you haven't had a chance to offer your support to one of those organizations, feel free to trace through the Idaho Gives link. Yeah. And I trust you'll be able to help them that way.
Yeah, that's a great
reminder.
Well,
thank you. Anything else as far as what our newcomers need to know? Have we done a pretty good job of covering the big points?
I think so. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. We so appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you for watching our community college community conversation on Discovering McCall. We're wanting to help our newcomers to succeed, and I get a sense that tonight was a very good first step in that conversation. The series itself will hopefully be 6 to 8 conversations that hopefully will then branch off into other conversations that might be helpful, possibly in the fall. But this spring, we're glad to be able to offer to you on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. an opportunity to have some of our local voices help us with these kinds of issues. This series is sponsored by a grant from the Idaho Community Foundation, and the Shelton Foundation is supporting Valley County, and they're a direct assistant in this particular venture for this series. We'll be recording each of our conversations, and those will be available on our youtube.com, McCall College, all one word, website on YouTube. And so next Thursday at 7 p.m., we have the privilege of talking with Chief Garrett DeYoung, who's our McCall Fire Chief, and he'll be helping us to succeed at fire protection. And for many of us, that is a point of high nervousness, is how do we protect our community from fire? And so we'll be thrilled to have a conversation with Chief Garrett next week. Please invite newcomers to watch, and your friends and family. We trust you'll make this a part of your Thursday evenings for the next few weeks. Until next week, discover more about McCall and the wonderful West Central Mountains. I'm Dr. Bryan Williams, president of McCall College. Thank you for watching.